On the program today, a visit with Kent Reid. Mr. Reid is the chief appraiser for Farm Credit Illinois, and they recently did their annual survey of farmland values. So we had the opportunity to visit by phone and kind of give you some of that information. Kent, the survey was really completed a couple of weeks ago. What are you finding? What should be of interest to our listeners?
What we do every year is we have 20 benchmark farms that are throughout our 60-county territory. We look at those every July, reappraise each one of those 20 farms. Some of those benchmark farms go back into the 1970s. So it gives us a really good look at historic values from 30 years ago all the way up to what's happening today. Interesting, as you know, in the early 2000s through 2014, land values were going up and up and up every day. We reached a peak in the Farm Credit Illinois territory in 2014. 2015 was pretty stable, and then 2016 and 17 and 18, we were seeing slight declines in overall values. 2020, we were believing in what we were seeing, that it was going to be pretty stable. And in reality, when we got done with all the benchmark farms, overall we're up about 2% from last year.
Do you find that a little surprising based on the commodity prices, quite honestly, and then also, of course, with exports, which affects the commodity prices, needless to say. And in addition to that, the COVID-19 situation, which I guess the virus probably didn't have too big of an effect on the survey, did it?
Well, it hasn't at this point. You ask if we were surprised. I think overall we felt like, if anything, it would have been even to maybe just slightly down, but there had been quite a bit of activity at the end of 2019, early 2020 to reflect that land values were still pretty strong. I mean, if you look overall the 20 farms, real estate is definitely location specific. Of the 20, we did have 5 of those farms that were down slightly. We had 12 that were up, some of them up just barely, and some up of 3, 4, 5%. And then we had 3 farms that didn't change at all. So are we surprised by those results? I think the overall point that I've seen over the last several years is it really comes down to supply and demand. And most people are kind of shocked when they hear that much less than 1% of farmland is available for sale each year in Illinois. So there's just not a huge supply of farmland on the market for sale. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we're seeing this stability, is just a lack of supply. The other thing that's really been fortunate for farmland values is, these interest rates are again back to historic lows. So we have low interest rates. But you're right. I mean, overall, the ag economy the last several years has not been great. We don't know what the effect of this pandemic is going to do on the demand for ethanol. And obviously that's going to affect commodity prices. And then, as you said earlier, with all the trade issues, there's a lot of negatives, but the supply and the low interest rates are all positives. And then when you're looking at just an investment, the instability of the stock market, the overall, there's just not a lot of alternative investment options right now. So that does lead to make farmland look like a really good investment at this point.
You mentioned the stock market, sir, and a realtor told me just a few weeks ago that the volatility in the stock market is causing many people, or maybe I should say has caused, several people to pull their money out of stocks and put it back into land. So I guess your survey kind of proves that's right, at least to a point.
Yes, I believe that's true. I mean, if you look throughout our territory, still the majority of the farmland purchases are farmers or your local investor that has ties to the community, has ties to agriculture. But again, those people, I think you're probably right, are looking at the stock market and looking at the land values and thinking, that farmland is still a really good investment.
And finally, Mr. Reid, what do you expect to take place in your crystal ball for the coming months?
There is a lot of uncertainty. All the things we've talked about, the ag economy, the trade issues, what effect the pandemic's going to have on all of this. But overall, if I had a crystal ball through the next year, you're still going to see some pretty good stability. If anything, you may see just a slight decline, but with interest rates and the alternative investments, I think overall we're still going to be stable throughout the next year.